Yeah, I think this subject is something that's very close to my heart, and the reason being that this question is often asked by others, and I ask myself that. And there are days I feel more optimistic, and there are days I feel more pessimistic. The pessimistic view that Bhaichand Bhai started and Arunadi said, which is true, that is cinema really changing that much? What is the kind of cinema are we watching? Are we assuming that the mainstream Bollywood film, have we also accepted that that is Indian cinema? Or are we still ready to say that that is part of Indian cinema? I've done films in 10 different languages, and the best part, I don't even have DVDs of half the films, and you all wouldn't even know 10 languages, yes, and you wouldn't even know the names of many of those films. But the fact is that some of my best experiences have been in those films, because the stories were amazing. People came with a different level of commitment and didn't compromise as much as the people in Bombay are having to do, or do, whatever the case may be. So when we say Indian cinema, we sometimes do get bogged down by the fact that we think it is Bollywood. Of course, it is the big fish. It does eat up a lot of small fishes, and it does take up a lot of space, but that's precisely the reason that I feel that we need to create that space for other films, which may be in other languages or Hindi, whatever the language may be, but stories that need to be told. Because if we resign to the fact that this is what it is, then documentary filmmakers, Akka is here, Mrs. Vijaya Muley is here, who's dedicated her life to documentary films and all of that, then there would be no place for documentary films, and we shouldn't be making those films at all. It's a larger question of also how we want to see art. Often I also get into debate with my friends, should art be for art's sake, or should it be for social change? And who is to decide? So I think at the end of the day, it is a personal decision. Mr. K.K. Daruwala is here, who's a poet. My father, Mr. Jatin Das, is here, he's a painter. So they express in the medium that they feel comfortable and they want to. Whether he can write a poem and he may never share it with us, or he will share it in a book and it may completely affect my life in a way that he will not even know. But the point is that when does it remain art? When does it transcend that? Is his decision. And therefore, I think that to say that this actor, this filmmaker should make socially relevant films is not our place. But if I choose to do films that I feel have a social conscience, then that also should be allowed. And when I say allowed is because I often get asked this question, don't you want to do commercial film? I mean, what is really your design, in terms of your work? Where do you want to go? Why do you do films in these languages that nobody even gets to see? Don't you think you would make more of an impact if you did a socially conscious subject in a mainstream film? But the point is, the means and the end have to be in sync. If you do it and I don't want to name them, it's in a way part of the fraternity, even though I'm on the fringes of it. If one does films that supposedly has a social conscience, or let's say brings out a social issue in a very mainstream format, yes, it reaches many people. But can it have that kind of depth or that kind of layering or complexity that life has? Because when you say it's a mass medium, when you say it has to reach a lot of people, it has to make a lot of money, you do end up sort of going to the lowest denominator, because you're trying to keep lots of people happy. And you cannot keep lots of people happy if you have something very specific or something very strong, whether it's a protest, whether it's a story that needs to be told. So I think that dilemma exists. In terms of whether cinema can create, or can be an agent of social change, like Arunadi said, that it triggers ideas, it triggers debates. And I think social change, if one had to ask what creates social change, I don't think we can say any one thing for that matter. Is there any one thing? Is it politics? Is it, academia? What is it that creates social change? There is no one thing, I think. I mean, we all are what we are is because of a product of many different influences that we have had, that we ourselves are not aware, that we have stored subconsciously. It could be a book that we read, it could be a film that we saw, it could be a painting that we saw, it could be a person that we met. And I think all of that gets stored. And then when we respond to situations in a particular way, and if we really reflect and if we look back, maybe we'll be able to trace some of the influences, but not all. And I think that's what cinema does, and not all cinema. Some cinema that comes with that intent of having a social conscience, of questioning things. I don't think good cinema really answers things for us, because if it answered all, there cannot be one answer for all of us. But if it raises questions and each one of us can find those answers, then that's a journey that's begun. From time to time, there are films that actually have impacted the society, and I've been fortunate to be part of one of such films, and that was Fire, which was my first film, in fact, where it was about a love relationship between two women. A subject that we did not talk openly. Forget about cinema, we just didn't really deal with it in our arts. And today, if 377 is being questioned, an act that says criminalizes homosexuality, there are seeds of it. I as a person, I know I've grown so much with that film. Not because of doing those 20 days of shoot, but because of the number of people I've met, the stories I've heard. You know, I come from a very liberal, both my parents are here, who gave me that freedom to questions from my childhood. But we didn't really talk about all these subjects. My own understanding and sensitivity has grown in the last 15 years because of the post-screening discussions, because of conversations with people sitting on a flight or in a college and all of that. So there are tangible impacts and there are intangible impacts. The intangible impact, in a way, from Fire was that when it was attacked, the fact people came out on the street and questioned freedom of expression, said whether it's a good or a bad film is immaterial. But can we be allowed to see the film that we want? Can we decide for ourselves whether we like the film or not? So similarly, films, whether it was Bawandar or whether the one I directed, Firak, and to answer your question, Arunadhi, in terms of commercial release, it didn't do well because the producers felt they had got enough awards, they had made their money by selling it on videos and all of that, and they didn't need to put in much. But thankfully, the life of a film is beyond a release. It is available on DVDs, it is on YouTube. I mean, in times of piracy, and one shouldn't be saying that I'm... politically, it's correct to say I'm anti-piracy, but piracy has democratized the process. There's so much on YouTube and on the internet that people who can't afford or who don't get to see, we can watch lots of different things that we want to watch but don't find access to. So I think from time to time there have been films, and film is such a thing that if all of us watched the same film, we would all take back from it different things. And how it's going to impact me may be very different from how it's going to impact you, and how I'm going to process it and how I'm going to implement in my life, even I don't know when I'm watching. So I think it does have that strength. And if it didn't, then art wouldn't threaten people. Hussain Saab's paintings wouldn't create a furrow. Salman Rushdie and Arundhati Roy's books wouldn't create problems. Water wouldn't have stopped. Attacks on fire wouldn't have happened. Of course, they somewhere feel that it does have a deeper subconscious impact. Otherwise, they should just brush it aside and they should say, how does it matter if it's just a painting or a book or a film? But because somewhere people do realize that art has a very interesting and insidious way almost of getting into your psyche, and that's why they feel threatened by it. So therefore, I do feel that neither should we think that it creates revolution. No, like everything else, it has its subtle ways of impacting. Nor do we have to feel so depressed that it creates no change at all. And again, taking from what Arunadhi said, that earlier films, the protagonist was much more connected to society. He was a farmer, he was a mill worker, the woman was somebody that we had seen. Of course, there was a closer connection with people like us, or when I say us, I don't mean still the educated and the affluent, but the common man on the street and all of us. I mean, there were different stories. Now there is a tendency of seeing, as she said, the urban South Bombay boy who dances in New York or Cape Town or wherever and eats at another foreign location. But strangely, what has intrigued me is that even the rural poor is actually, because now with the television going everywhere, the rural poor is also watching that, and the NRI sitting in New Jersey is also watching that. And I don't watch too much of mainstream, but I'm very intrigued by the fact that how come, what is that aspirational thing that is in a strange way connecting? And I, for the longest time, I'm completely guilty, and I confess that I sort of was prejudiced about the mainstream, and there was a bit of righteousness maybe that, I don't do it, I don't see it, it doesn't impact my life, and I can stay away from it, and not everybody is affected by it. But in the last 5-6 years, in my traveling to various places, whether in the country or outside, I have to admit that a lot of people watch it. It does influence their life. Outsiders, they think that is being Indian. So it is very scary, the kind of dances or the songs, or this modern woman who works and wears pant and shirt, but what she does we still don't know, because we never really see her work. Is she thinking, is there any complexity in her character? We don't see all of that. So yes, it is very dangerous, it is very scary, because economics is interfering so much with art, and which is not true only for films. I think it's entered every field. Everything is about packaging and marketing, and can you sell it, how to make it viable. All that has become so important that if the art is lost, then it's fine. So who really struggles are the smaller directors, those who want to tell different kind of stories in a different way. There is not enough space. When the multiplex came, we thought, wow, the 200 seaters, I'm sure there would be space for the kind of films that we want to watch or we want to do. But even the multiplex are showing those 100 crore films. So what do you do? Where are those spaces? I remember seeing at Shakuntalam some lovely films that we used to watch as, in our college. The open spaces are decreasing. Everywhere it is about making things viable. And when you want to make things viable, you have to toe the line. You don't take a chance. You don't risk. When you don't risk, other stories get lost. I remember I did a small film, a Telugu film, which even I haven't seen it. And it was about the Banjara tribes there, the Lambadas, and how they sell and buy children. And the story of a mother who by mistake swaps a child. I mean, her child gets swapped, and then now she's stuck with this daughter, but she develops an attachment to that daughter. And now when her real child comes, she doesn't know what to do, because by now she's also attached to this other child whom she actually didn't want in the first place. So where are these stories? Or Mahashweta Devi's story, which I did a Marathi film called Mati Maya with Chitra Palekar. Again, a very interesting story about a woman who buries little children till she has her own child, and she's so proud of her work because her father left it for her. But now she doesn't want to do that work, and she suddenly realized that it wasn't really a choice that she has to continue to do, otherwise she'll be ostracized. So there are all these 12 minutes, I know. So sorry, it's just that it's close to my heart in a way, and so just the fact that there are all these wonderful stories. So even though this question gets asked that why do you do films that nobody watches? And I tell myself that I do them because at least it is made somewhere, it's tucked in somewhere. If someday you want to see maybe there will be no Lambadas, maybe there are migrant laborers, maybe the urbanization will eat that culture completely. There is no script of the Lambadas. Maybe it will be somewhere tucked in. Maybe this Mahashweta Devi story, now people will not want to make these films because they're too rural, they're too dark, nobody wants to see serious films. So that it is a big struggle, but I think if we become cynical and pessimistic, then whatever little space there is for these stories will also go. Thank you.